It is 5:03. May I have roll call, please?
Councilmember Miller,
Present.
Councilmember Ramos Amit,
Present.
she's present on Zoom. Councilmember Ortiz,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Furman,
Present.
and Mayor Holmes.
Present. I'd like to please stand for the invocation, please, and then ask Councilmember Glenn Miller for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay.
Ready? Heavenly Father, we thank you today for this council meeting. We pray that you would
Rabbi,
give...
you are on mute. We
Oh.
can't hear you.
Okay, change to just speaker. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you today for this council meeting. We thank you, Lord God, for giving each leader eyes to see, ears to hear, to listen, and to a heart to understand every need and every concern that comes before the desk today that is on the table. I pray that you would give us wisdom and understanding and might in every area, that we would consider the needs of our community, the city that you have planted us in, the nature in which it infects and affects those that are being concerned by these needs. And we also pray today that we would get solutions for every situation, not by just asking what must we do on how to fix a situation, but also what we must learn to change. We thank you today that even though there's conflict, whenever there's change, there is growth. So I just pray today and ask for your wisdom and guidance for every word that is said, every thought, every plan, and even its execution, that you would give wisdom today, and there would be a great outcome in today's meeting. In the name above every name, in your name we pray. Amen.
Yeah. You put your hand over your heart so we can pay homage to the flag of our country. For all those who protected it before, now, and in the future, please begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Okay, City Attorney, report on closed session, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The City Council met in closed session for the items listed therein, and there is no reportable action.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 5, report on City Council external, internal boards, commissions, and committee meetings. I'd like to start with Councilmember Miller.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Had a couple of my commissions and committees that were active during the last few weeks. One of them was Sunline Transit Agency, still looking for bus drivers at Sunline. They're running the Saturday routes. They're not able to fully staff the buses like they would normally Monday through Friday, which is usually busier because they do not have the personnel. So if you are looking to maybe change your career or looking for a job at an agency, Sunline is looking for people to go to work for them. But right now, the agency is running on a Saturday schedule, and we just approved our micro transportation program, which we were highlighting and basically as a model program. And what it does is it's a taxi cab program that picks up people in between stops that are in areas where they have a long distance and takes them to the bus route so they can get on the buses. Very affordable. It started up in the central area of the Coachella Valley, and now it's expanded out to Thermal and other areas. And so you can find that on everything you need to know on indio.org if you go for Sunline, or sunline.org if you're looking for any information on bus routes or things that are happening for Sunline. Secondly, ECAC, which is the Coalition for IID. It's a group of us from the Eastern Coachella Valley that look at energy issues with the IID. We had a 3-hour meeting on Monday night talking about CIPs, what's going on in the Coachella Valley, what it does, just not here, but what it does in Imperial Valley, because we're interconnected, and looking at long-term solutions to keep the rates low from green energy and other energy that's being brought in from Arizona. The energy that's brought into a lot of the Coachella Valley and Imperial Valley come from Arizona or some of the natural geothermal plants at the Salton Sea. That's all part of their network. So they're trying to figure out long-term solutions like with a battery network so they can store battery storage for some of the energies when they're losing it. So they're looking at ways to have long-term stability in the rates we do. As you know, we're very fortunate here in the Coachella Valley and Indio to have a lower rate with IID, and they're looking to make sure they subsidize it. It's not part of the larger grid of all the electrical users in the Southern California and California. They're kind of an independent, so they have their own programs and their own contracts with other agencies to bring in power, and they buy it off the grid. So sometimes it goes up and down. The more they can have stability, the better prices we can have. So those two were my two commission meetings. And then a couple of great things going on. We had the Coachella Valley Rescue Mission. The mayor spoke at it. It's great partnerships with us. Another 70 plus graduates from their women's and men's programs where people have changed their lives by working with the rescue mission and other agencies to turn their lives around. So a nice graduation. The mayor spoke. It was great to see these people turn their lives around, but also at the same time know that the resources through the rescue mission, the city of Indio, our police department, and others are helping them to get where they need to go. The Indio Senior Center, I was there for the Day of the Dead celebration yesterday. We had about 80 seniors there. Great group. If you haven't been to our senior center, please go down and have a look around. It's another one of our little gyms that continue to support our residents, our seniors there. We have our teen center, which is nearby, but I want to take my hat off to our employees there. They do a great job. Jim Curtis and the whole team of working with our seniors. They had tamales, they had face painting contests, and they learned about the Day of the Dead. So just another opportunity for our residents to be able to have some stability and be able to have some fun at the same time. So my hat's off to our team. And then Parker Johnson Gonzalez, it was a Eagle Scout. I was fortunate enough to give him a award for his Eagle Scout. Another Eagle Scout here in the Coachella Valley, lives in Indio and based out of Troop 1701. And so Gonzalez has been doing a lot, and he has done some of our flag boxes to be able to put flags in so that they're taken care of properly, to make sure that our flags, when they're retired, are taken through the process, what we do through the United States, to make sure they're taken and put away properly and then disposed of properly. So my hat's off to him. And then the last one was I had a meeting with the American Cancer Society with our youth. We have about 3 or 4 of our youth that are working with the VIVE program, which is a program to help kids understand the ills of smoking, smokeless tobacco, and chew and what it is. And they're working to try and make some zones out here, and they're working with American Cancer Society as volunteers to try and get the word out to fellow students to be able to limit the access to tobacco, and are coming up with some plans and programs to be able to see if the city of Indio will go along with it and try and start a movement to limit that access to tobacco. So other than that, Madam Mayor, looking forward to the barbecue festival coming up here this weekend over at the Lights of Indio Golf Course. So if you haven't been there, and then Tamale Festival will be back. So great opportunities to spend some time with your fellow residents and enjoy some great food and some good music.
Absolutely. Busy week, busy couple of weeks. Thank you, Councilmember Miller. Councilmember Amit.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report this evening.
Thank you. Councilmember Oscar Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all for joining us today. all my commissions were dark these past 2 weeks. I did just want to remind everybody that we do have our sustainability event at the Indio Courtyard this weekend. So you can bring in your old tires, your used oil filters, any electronic waste, and we'll also have a compost exchange. So if you bring your old compost, we'll give you a batch of what's it called? Mulch to use, new compost, yeah. And then we also have paper shredding, free paper shredding at that event. Another reminder, we do have, as Councilmember Miller said, the barbecue state championship at the Indio Golf Course this weekend. That's going to be 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday. And then we'll have the Day of the Dead celebration at the Coachella Valley History Museum. And that's going to be 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. And that's all I have. Thank you.
That's quite a bit. Mayor Pro Tem.
First off, I want to show off my mask here from Andrew Jackson Elementary here in North Indio. I promised them I would wear it. And that takes me into my first item. I attended the mural dedication for Jackson Elementary. It was a great mural that they have there. It has former President JFK on it, Ruth Ginsburg, Cesar Chavez, and Dr. Martin Luther King. And it's a great role model mural, and it's one of the best in our city. And I think that's just going to start off what we plan on to keep doing. I had a great conversation with City Manager yesterday about some more artwork possibly coming along Monroe and John Noble's Brick Walls area. We have a lot of free space to bring some of our local artists in. So it looks like we will be reaching out to our art commission in collaboration with some local artists and continue on that great path of bringing some great murals to our community while we're still refurbishing some of our old ones and really cementing our history here in the community. I also attended a Indio Rotary Club meeting, which was great. It's my first Rotary Club meeting I was invited to, and I actually had the opportunity to listen to City Manager Montgomery give a presentation and welcoming and give updates on some of our projects we have going on in the city. And I won't steal his thunder, but he's a member of the Rotary, and for him to move to Indio and pick up where he left off, that's just great. And there's some really great folks there. They do a lot of work behind the scenes that some of us don't see. You might see council members, you might see artists and promoters up front, but there's always folks, staff, Rotary Club members, and other nonprofits really supporting our city. And Indio Rotary Club is one of those. So thank those folks for inviting me. And also, we talked about the barbecue festival. I can't wait for that. The award ceremony will be at 4:30. I'll be there doing that. And also on Saturday, we have one of our local bike clubs that will be on the streets doing a little ride. So keep your eyes and ears open for that. As traffic, there may be a couple delays, but it's great to have visitors in our community and create this great synergy downtown with some of the other projects that we have coming along. Also, I just want to mention Sarbala K, that's over at Dr. Carry-On. It's a great art project that we brought from the Coachella Music and Arts Festival at Dr. Carry-On Park. We're still working on some of the installation and landscaping and some of the improvements in the park. But once that's finalized and we're able to invite the community out to have a dedication and really recognize some of the folks in that community, that's going to be a great project. And we're looking forward to having more. So, thank the folks over at Golden Voice and for working and having a great partnership with the city and getting that artwork to our city. Other than that, that would conclude my report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very, very much, Mayor Pro Tem. So lots going on. We're all involved with a lot of things. I attended the Jackson School, the leadership mural. It was really, really great was the kids and their involvement and their engagement. And a young lady that was 11 years old that had no problem being in front of the microphone, in front of the mural, describing it. Those are our future leaders. It was really great. The idea of this mural is that every morning as kids walk in, they pass the mural and they understand leadership and they understand what it represents. And they aspire to a leadership role at some point in their lives. And there's so many opportunities for that. I enjoy the things we get to do at the schools. Also attended CVAG Transportation Committee. Let me kind of give you A little bit of detail on that. One of the things that we approved is what they call the Regional Bicycle and Pedestrian Guidelines. They call them, it's referred to as a transformative project. And it's really, you know, as our roads and streets throughout the cities are, as they evolve and expand, and there's different things that we can do. How about a bicycle repair station in certain paths along the way? I thought that was really cool. There's a lot of bicyclists out there. Professional bicyclists and the like have a bicycle repair station. They talked about stairway channels as well. Never thought about that, right? Instead of walking your bike up and down the stairs, you can put in a stairway channel. And of course, all the the colors to ensure the safety of those that are bicycling and walking. And so we did adopt the active transportation design guidelines for that. Some of the cities like San Pablo and Palm Desert, by the way, where blockheads from Indio were this past weekend, they are a father-son bicycle club performed, or they were there in mass, and that was really great to kick that off. The other thing we talked about is funding, next funding phase for the Monroe Street Interstate 10 Interchange project. We all want to alleviate the traffic on Monroe and Jackson. Jackson's coming up. Monroe is the #1 priority, due to start construction in 2024. And we provide additional regional funding for right-of-way acquisition at a not to exceed amount of $4.9 million. Next funding phase for the Jackson Street Interstate 10 project. You know, it's interesting, when I first got here, all of the Indio projects were at the bottom of the list. And finally, they're at the top of the list. And it's really good because as we have so much growth in our city, the need for us not to be stuck in traffic particularly going north at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the evening is very necessary. So at any rate, we authorized an additional $4.8 million on funding for what they call plans, specifications, and estimates for the Jackson Street Bridge. So we're moving right along as best as we can on that. Let's see, what else? We approved the City of Laquinta Dune Palms Bridge project. As everybody knows, where Dune Palms is, the slightest little bit of rain, it really floods there. So that needs to happen. $3.8 million is what we approved. Need to go to rctc.org, support our train. Every single one of us in the room, we need to go rctc.org to get to the next step in getting our train running here in future years. Let's see, the Coachella Valley Rescue Mission graduation is always a favorite of mine. You know, just to look at or to be a part of a group of people that had to work so hard, that made the determination, that had the focus, the desire within them to move forward in their lives and to make the sacrifices necessary to live a whole and complete life. They have endured much, and to go through this process and graduate means a lot to them. And it certainly really emphasizes how far they've come. Love going to that. Really like to see the heart that people have, the caring, and how people work as a group and as a team to help each other along the path of life. Very, very rewarding, very happy to see the graduates. And that is all I have to report. Go right ahead. Jump in.
I'm sorry, you know me, I always have all the stuff going on and a lot of good stuff, but I do want to talk about one of the challenges that I've been notified about, and I just want to show the public that we're working on it. We know that we've had some brick walls that have been struck by vehicles around our city, and it's an eyesore, and it's very complex issues to get these walls done, whether it's private property, whether it's city property, where there's insurance claims that we have to work on. But I just want to assure the public, myself, the city manager, our public works team, our police, and our code enforcement, we're working diligently to find solutions for all these holes in some of these walls. And as we work on these beautification projects in our city, we still want to maintain what we already have. And this is part of it. So I just want to let those folks know who have reached out to me that we are still looking for the proper solutions to get those issues rectified. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Absolutely. Okay, I'd like to move on to item number 6, city manager reports and information.
Thank you, Mayor. Certainly, we want to thank all of those that participated in our recent election. So we had a special election held to consider Measure E, and many folks came out, participated by mail and otherwise. The results show that there's a large amount of confidence and trust that's being placed in us as public officials here at the city. And I just wanted to commit publicly that we won't let the community down for that support and the opportunity we have to expand these one-time capital projects. The mayor mentioned a number of transportation projects. I believe that over the next handful of months, there will be more roadway projects underway than have ever been done in the city of Indio. So the results, and again, appreciate those that participated. On the note here, under my reports, we had intended to have the folks from CUSP here to give us an update on the Tamale Festival. They're actually at this very moment working with some vendors and others, and had asked that we postpone until next council meeting a more up-to-date, last-minute type update as they gear up for the Tamale Festival, which will be the first weekend in December. So we look forward to that. I did have a couple of items, if there's just a quick PowerPoint with Measure E's results becoming more and more known, we're able to jump back into the strategic planning discussion. So if Matt and Bat can pull up that PowerPoint, just wanted to run through quickly the process that we started and paused for a period of time and want to get back going just quickly. So if Matt could share that screen. If not, I'll just talk about it. There it is. Thank you. So just quickly, just as a reminder, the key elements of the strategic plan involve setting forth a mission statement, the areas that we should focus on, some specific goals within those areas of focus, and then some specific action items that if we accomplish those action items, we will be accomplishing the goals set forth by the city council. And there's a tremendous amount of public input that we want to garner, as well as continued input and guidance from the city council. So right now we have a draft of some areas of focus. What I would like to do is, I see a typo here or two, but we will start publishing these online for some public input on whether these areas of focus would adequately address some of the key issues that we think are on the horizon. I will say these came from direct surveys of residents, what they felt like were priorities. After I arrived, we conducted a series of surveys, both online as well as direct phone calls. And this is a smattering of those areas of focus. But underneath each one of those foci, for example, public safety was one that's not surprising. That's an area of focus, fire, police, ambulance services. Here's a proposed goal relating to public safety. But the next question, and really where we're at in this process, is what do we need to do? What do we need to focus on to be able to accomplish that goal? So the staff team has started to assemble some ideas for specific action items. I know the font of the typeface here is a little bit small, but as I mentioned as an example, public safety, there's the goal stated, the area of focus being public safety. And then you see some potential action items that if accomplished over a, let's say, we will start more aggressively addressing that goal. For example, completing phase 1 of the public safety campus. We're aware we have 50-year-old buildings that were built for 20 police officers, and now we have could have up to 90, and we need to have space for our computer, our 911 dispatch, and so forth. A new system for our dispatch, as well as our report writing records management system. Anyway, these are an example of just 4, but there may be many, many others that we need to make sure as staff, we have the resources, both staff and financially, to accomplish, get your buy-in, your approval, your direction, and then certainly the public weighing in on these items. And as you see, there's a checkbox by each one of those action items. And the idea is when we accomplish them, we'll check them off and move on to the next item. Of course, a lot of them will be done concurrently. So the concept is at this point, we've been struggling to bring a meeting together, but I'd like to call it a virtual input period where the council, staff, the community can weigh in on these areas of focus and suggest some action items that you would then consider at a subsequent meeting. And in looking at some dates with staff and with you, both of these appear at the moment to be good dates. And since it's been such a struggle to nail these down, maybe just a quick question, Mayor, if it's okay, if whether one of these dates is better or not, or if it won't, neither will work from any of the council members.
Let's take November 30th. How does everybody's schedule look like on November 30th, Tuesday? It's good for me.
Well, how do we come up with these dates?
Well, just the series of dates I've been smattering in emails.
Yeah, they're.
I know a Thursday is usually better for you,
I'm good.
Mayor Pro.
I'm good with both.
You good with both?
I think the 7th is better for me, but I'm not sure. Are we? Let me look at some. The conference is the week after. ICSC conference.
Is the day
That's
before.
the
It ends the day,
five,
the
six.
sixth.
Yeah.
That's 6.
I'm out of town on the 7th.
So it looks like the 30th.
The 30th.
Might be the best.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I apologize. I know it's just difficult juggling schedules and we've been waiting to see the results of Measure E to help guide our discussions, but the rubber will start hitting the road, so to speak. And we'll confirm that date. Looks like the 30th
The
will
30th.
be the one. And between now and then, we'll provide this virtual opportunity and look forward to really cementing what those action items are and making it happen. So Mayor, with that, that's my report for this evening.
Okay, that's quite a report. Thank you very, very much. I'd like to go on to item number 7, the consent calendar. Is there any item that someone on council wishes to pull, or do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar as presented.
Okay.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Councilmember Miller and a second by Councilmember Ortiz. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit.
Aye.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Furman
All right.
and Mayor Holmes.
I will abstain on item number J and I on the rest of the consent calendar.
And the abstention is because of the property ownership within that area. And the clerk shall note that for the record.
Thank you very much. Item number 8, administrative items, resolution number 10237, authorizing the issuance and sale of city pension obligation bonds and authorizing a validation action and other related actions. Mr. Rockwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a brief PowerPoint presentation. As you mentioned, staff is asking authorization to issue and sell pension obligation bonds and the associated documents, including execution and delivery of the indenture and the purchase contract, as well as the validation action. So this slide might look familiar to you. You're probably thinking that I'm about to start the 36 PowerPoint slide presentation that I did at 3 o'clock today. I promise you that's not going to happen. That's the abbreviated version, but we did go through a lot of information at 3 o'clock today. Basically, the issuance of pension obligation bonds, that's taxable debt that the government issues, and that will be to pay for the unfunded actuarial liability. So here in this slide, you'll see that the city of Indio has promised pension obligations totaling $241 million. There are $165.7 million in assets available to pay for those pension obligations, but there's a $75 million gap. So the recommendation is to issue the pension obligation bonds that will equal about $75 million, pay down that difference. And by going to the municipal market today, we borrow at a 3.5% interest rate, and we avoid the 7% interest rates that we're currently being charged for that gap from CalPERS, the California Public Employees Retirement System. The pension obligation bond debt replaces the payments of the unfunded actuarial liability that the city is currently paying now that are going up, that are on the rise. POBs fall under the exception of the constitutional debt limit because the public agency obligation is to fund its pension systems, and therefore, in order to sell these bonds, we have to go through a court validation process that could take about 4 to 5 months. We had an actuarial here today to go through 1,000 different scenarios because the issuing pension obligations is not without risk. The actuarial results show that there's a 71% confidence that there will be a positive outcome based on the market conditions for issuing the pension obligation bonds. This slide represents, the red line represents the expected the UAL obligations that we have to pay to CalPERS. The blue lines are the actual payments that we would make on a POB. So the gap between the red line and the blue bars is effectively the savings that the city of Indio would achieve. We've run this under two scenarios. One's assuming an interest rate environment that is about 0.5% higher than it is now, and an interest rate environment that is 1% higher than it is now, because again, we're going to go to the market in about 5 or 6 months. We don't know what those conditions would be. So under the situation where the interest rates rise 0.5%, the assumed savings over the 22-year period for the city of Indio would be about $23 million. And if the interest rates are not as positive and they go up about 1%, then the savings to the city of Indio over the 22-year period will be closer to $18 million. So if the council approves the issuance of the pension obligation bonds tonight, the judicial validation process would start soon after. And then we would come back to the city council in March for final approval of the pension obligation process. And then we would sell bonds at the end of March or the beginning of April, depending on when the process was complete. So in a nutshell, that's the pension obligation plan, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Try that again. Thank you. That's very good information. I appreciated the study session earlier. Does anyone on council have any comments or questions? Go right ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Good evening, Rob. I'd just like to go over what we did earlier for the public and for the record, the actual roles of the municipal advisor, the actuary, legal, and underwriter, so the public can understand how this process works, and also how you gave a summary of what our outcome is or what our goal is of refinancing the bonds and what it's going to save our city if we do this.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Furman. So the city can't do this without some help. It takes a small team. We have our financial advisor who works for the company Monroe and Associates. He works on our behalf to make sure that we're getting all the obligations out of the way. He's doing the projections for us. He's also keeping an eye on the underwriter. Underwriter is another important part of the team. Underwriter serves as the banker. They're the person who actually buys the bonds and sells the bonds on the open market to the actual investors. So they're an important part of the process. We also have bond counsel that is involved in the process, and the bond counsel is to make sure that the documents are all legally accurate. And there's also a trustee involved that makes sure that the city fulfills its promises to the bondholders that buy the bonds. And then, of course, for the analysis of the risk analysis, we had hired an actuarial from Bartels and Associates to give us an idea of what the potential outcomes of the purchase or the sale of the pension obligation bonds and what might happen in the market with different scenarios. So did I cover all those for you?
Yes.
So, and then again, the assumed savings is that instead of having to pay CalPERS various amounts, because then that amounts are increasing, we'd pay a pension obligation bond, which would make it an even payment. So it's like almost like a 7% adjustable mortgage where you're not sure what you're going to be billed. And now we're going to lock in a 3.5% interest rate over a 20-year term. And we're going to recognize those savings, which again, could be as much as $23 million. And hopefully later we're going to come back with a policy and we're going to talk about what to do with that $23 million in savings that's going to happen over the next 22 years.
Thank you. And actually on the PowerPoint, it says RFP went out for the underwriter early October. It's November. Yeah. Where are we at in that process?
So that's the part of the team. We don't have an underwriter selected just yet. An RFP means we've issued a request for proposals. Monroe and Associates, which is our underwriter, has now received those proposals and qualifications. And now we're going to sit down with them probably in the next week, look at the prices and the experience from the companies that have offered to do the work for us. And then we'll choose the right one and from that pool, and then we'll move on.
And our advisors, I know you've done your homework, have extensive experience in doing these kind of things.
From what I've seen, all of the proposals that have been submitted are all really high quality companies, and really it'll come down to a matter of which one can do it for the best value.
Mhm.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right, good clarification. Any other comments or do I hear a motion?
I don't have any other comments other than long time coming.
Yes.
Thank you for all your work you and your team did, Rob, and looking
Yeah.
forward to the results. $20 million is a lot of money to put back in the residents' pockets to utilize for other opportunities. So I'll recommend the motion to adopt resolution number 10237, authorizing the issuance and sale of the City of Indio pension obligation bonds, approving as to form and authorize the execution and delivery of an indenture and a purchase contract, authorizing a validation action and authorizing certain related actions.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Miller and a second from Mayor Pro Tem Furman. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit.
Aye.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Furman.
Aye.
And Mayor Holmes.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 8B, ordinance number 1766, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Indio, amending Chapter 37 of the Indio Municipal Code relating to short-term rentals. Ms. Diaz.
Take it down there. So
Okay.
just give me a minute.
Sure.
Here. Okay, great. Great, thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Roxanne Diaz, and I'm the city attorney for the city of Indio, and I have with me Jason Anderson, who's the head of our code enforcement division. So after 3 study sessions, we bring before you the revised ordinance that has taken into account your comments at those study sessions. In addition, we received some comments from Airbnb and from Expedia. We've had a meeting with Expedia, conversations with Airbnb, and we did take into account some of those comments as well. And then I think you might have some public comments tonight as well. Mr. Ellis, I believe is his name. He sent us some comments, and we also took some of those into account as well. So certainly I just wanted to let the council know that this was as inclusive a process as possible. And certainly tonight is the time for anybody from the public who would like to, provide their input. Certainly that's what we're here for. So what you have before you, just that everyone knows, is a revised ordinance that just has some typo corrections, some additional comments that we got late today, and some things that we noticed. Nothing too substantive, but I'll go over that at the end. But I wanted to make sure you have a copy. If anybody from the public needs a copy, I think we have an extra copy or two. Just let us know and we can provide that to you, but I will go over it. So I'll go ahead and start. Okay. So as we started, when we began this process, we talked about our current challenges. And maybe I'll let Jason go ahead and kick it off because he's really the guy that's on the front lines.
Thank you, Roxanne. Jason Anderson, Code Enforcement Manager. Thank you for having us tonight. And some of the current challenges that we have is our current set of ordinances don't adequately address neighborhood impacts. We are unable to identify operators, guests, renters of these homes. We have challenges collecting TOT outside the Airbnb platform. As you guys know, we have a contract with Airbnb that they collect the TOT on our behalf and submit it back to the city. Other platforms, we don't have that opportunity. And what we noticed during COVID was STRs are becoming long-term rentals for certain timeframes and becoming short-term rentals and long-term rentals. And it's sort of a cycle whenever they can get people into their homes. So it's becoming more difficult to identify short-term rentals versus long-term rentals. So this ordinance attempts to at least look at those in the same light. So I don't know if you want to go ahead. So the goal of this new proposed ordinance is to reduce the neighborhood impacts, because ultimately the citizens have to deal with the impacts caused by short-term rentals. It's also designed to protect consumers. We do that through inspections of the property. We have a newly developed inspection scheme, and really just increase accountability of STR operators. We're also looking at modernizing the permit process. Eventually, it'll be automated where you can apply for a permit, pay your TOT taxes online, so it's not as paper-based as it currently is. We're trying to provide better customer support for not only residents who have problems with short-term rentals, but for the short-term rental operators, trying to make it easy to comply with the law.
Great.
So if you want to.
Sure. And then, so in terms of the application process, I wanted to provide this matrix. And it's really a 4-step process. The submission of the application, there's an inspection, and there's a staff review and approval or denial. With respect to the application, the property owner will, of course, his application, as we stated, we hope to be online with this new platform, so we'll make it much smoother and easier. The one thing that is different in this ordinance is to make it clear that we will be requiring a letter from the HOA if the short-term rental is in a homeowners association that states that the short-term rental is not prohibited by their CC&Rs. If the rental is, and if the property is within an HOA that does not have a board of directors, but just limited by CC&Rs, and we ask for the copy of the CC&Rs as well. There will be a parking plan submitted and a consent to inspect. And with respect to the inspection process, that's something that we're doing already, but we'd like to streamline the process with forms that we will provide, checklists, so everyone's very clear in terms of what we're looking at and what's expected. And we will provide those forms. And our hope is to put everything online to make it very clear of what the process is so that it's fair and equal for everyone. And this will be the building, fire, health, and safety inspection, a verification of bedrooms. And the requirement is for every new permit, there'll be an inspection, and then thereafter you can self-certify. And every 5 years, if that home continues to be a rental, then we will ask for a new inspection. And of course, if there are corrections that happen during the permitting process, then those corrections need to be taken care of. For example, if we notice that there is not a fire alarm, that's supposed to be there, then that needs to be corrected before a permit is issued. So we'll go through staff review. And then what the new ordinance also provides is more robust grounds for denial and, of course, revocation and suspension. For example, if the property doesn't meet minimum safety requirements, if the owner is delinquent in outstanding TOT taxes or fines, or if the permit has been revoked or suspended in the last 12 months. And the city will be able and have the ability to impose conditions as well. And we talked a little bit about this in one of our study sessions, for example, with noise. There's built into this ordinance that we can require a noise monitor if that's something that we see as an issue with that particular property. But there's different things that we can do with respect to site specific. So once the permit is issued, it's valid for 12 months. And something new in this ordinance is that we will be providing neighborhood notice. So that way it's clear to the neighbors that there is an STR that is within 500 feet of their property. The annual renewal, they have to submit a renewal form 60 days before expiration. One of the items that we added was the revocability of the permit, a 3 strike, so to speak. So if there's 3 violations during the permit term, we can revoke the permit. We can always revoke the permit, don't get me wrong, at any time. But again, we wanted to build in some standards and some processes as well. So we expect that if there are no property corrections, you should be able to get through the process within 30 days, perhaps 60 days if there are property corrections, but maybe less depending on what those are. So some improved operational requirements. Rental contracts are to be submitted to the city. The city did this during COVID. And, of course, it was not as automated as we planned it to be. So we believe that this will be a lot simpler. The occupancy needs to be displayed in advertisements. Contact person. This is the person who the owner picks as the first line of somebody who responds. They need to live in the Coachella Valley, but they also need to live within 30 minutes of the rental as well. We're going to require a cling, kind of like the, restaurants, the food, A, B, and whatnot, a posting of the STR notice in the window of the property. And then there's going to be a check-in process where either the owner or the agent has to be present on site or by video. And this will allow the owner to advise the renter, which we call the responsible person, of the operational requirements of the local contact person information. And then there's executed informational acknowledgement forms as well. In terms of some other improved operational standards, we had a very robust discussion on noise and amplified sound. And I think hopefully that this captures what the council's was trying to balance. And so there are 2 provisions with respect to amplified sound. And the first is that there's no outside amplified sound between 9 p.m. and 8 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, and 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. Friday and Saturday that is audible. And so in the ordinance and what's reflected in the red line version is just a clarification, and that's on page 12. Previously, the language said that that no radio, loudspeaker, karaoke machine, etc., that produces or reproduces sound shall be used outside or be audible from the outside. And so what we did is now it reads that is audible from the outside. So certainly if one can use their cell phone outside, but it just can't be audible to the property line. So we made that clarification. The next item with respect to the restrictions on outside amenities that create noise, occupants are prohibited from using outside amenities, pool or, cornhole, et cetera, that creates noise between 9 p.m. and 8 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, and 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. Friday and Saturday. So again, just a clarification that wasn't made in the last PowerPoint is that this has to do with you can still be outside. You can still, if you want a glass of wine out on the terrace, that's fine, but you just can't do activities that create noise that can be heard at the end of the property line. And we know that we've discussed the enforcement part of it, but we believe that we needed something, a tool to be able to implement, again, whether that's a neighbor, whether that's something if we happen to be in that neighborhood. So we do understand that there are challenges to some parts of this, but we feel that this is pretty standard now in the newer ordinances. And so, of course, we can report back to see how it's working, but it's something that we'd like to move forward with. So next is occupancy. And with occupancy, we have amended that. Our previous occupancy started off with 2 people and then 2 per bedroom. And our previous ordinance, or our current ordinance, I should say, I'll go to that slide, is 2 per bedroom plus 2 additional people, no daytime limit. And we had a process where the occupancy could be increased based on the configuration of the home. And so when the inspector would go out, somebody would ask for increased occupancy, and depending on the home, then that can be increased. And there was some not unevenness about it, but certainly it just depended on the situation. And so what we looked at is to increase the occupancy, the base level at 4, and then add a 2 per bedroom. And so I'll go back to that. Don't know how to go back to that slide, do you? One more. Okay, so for example, if you have a large property of 5 bedrooms and the occupancy is 14, 8 or more bedrooms, the occupancy caps out at 20. This includes adults and children. We don't make a distinction between the two, recognizing that even a 1-bedroom will probably have a pull-out couch in the living room, and it may have either bunk beds or it may have a king in the other room. So we're trying to accommodate for that. And I think it'll be easier in terms of enforcement, and certainly that it's a level playing field, so everyone knows that no one can get more occupancy if they desired it for the unit. And so one of the things that we struggled with, of course, was the gatherings. People rent a home to come out to the desert. It's beautiful out here during Thanksgiving. It's sunny, and they want their family there. And, how do we tell somebody when we in our own homes can have our family of 30 people, but you can't have it at the short-term rental? But we're trying to balance the issues with compatibility in the neighborhoods, et cetera. And so something that one of our other neighboring cities has is a 25-person limit, day or night. And to address the large gatherings, if you have and expect 25 people or more, then you need to come in for a special use permit. Again, our hope is to automate that as well, to make it very simple. This would be something that would be required for the occupant, meaning the responsible person, the person who rents the home, to do this, and they would have to get the owner's permission. I will say that, for example, Airbnb now on all of its rentals has a maximum occupancy, I believe, of 10 or 12, as a matter of course, regardless of whether the host, the person who owns the renter, the property, will allow more people. And so they've been under fire with respect to loud parties and just, parties taking over their units. And so they've set that as a company-wide standard. So I think, again, it depends on, what platform it's rented through. I don't know if the other platforms have such a condition, but now that we've been in discussions with them, we now have contact persons at the 2 main platforms. And so we can keep that line of communication open. And I think that'll be a good thing. In terms of prohibited activities, we went over this. Again, some of this is already in our current ordinance, but I just wanted to highlight, you can't rent the pool. You can't rent an RV on the property or a tree house, even though maybe in other states you can rent a tree house, but not here. Structures that are not built for habitable use, such as tents and sheds and garages, are also prohibited from being rented. You can't have a compound, meaning that if you have a large piece of property that may have 2 homes, or if you own 2 separate pieces of property and you want to group them together so that you have a 10-acre lot instead of, maybe, whatever it is, you can't do that. You can't have a compound to then essentially run amok and, treat it as this large party home, because that's what we've seen in the past. Apartments, duplexes, ADUs, mobile homes, trailers cannot be used as a short-term rental. There are some more robust revocation provisions. This ordinance, as the previous one, does allow for the city to adopt administrative regulations to implement the ordinance. Again, the city is going to provide templates to streamline the process. It'll eventually be online. And one thing that we're not bringing forward to you today, but we will, either at the next meeting or the meeting thereafter, is we have, and as the council knows, we had a discussion about the permit fees and the fine schedule. And so we've been undergoing a permit fee study, and we will be bringing back to you the new permit fees, which are going to be substantially higher based on the study that we have done with respect to short-term rentals and the impact that it has on the city with respect to the amount of time it takes to process this. And then on the fine schedule, we will be bringing back an adjusted fine schedule, again, that they'll be much more robust in the fines. I know that in the past, some other cities, charter cities, have higher fines than we do because we're a general law city, but the governor just signed legislation that allows the city to adopt higher fines, 3,000, 5,000, and I think it's 10,000, but I might be wrong. I don't have my report in front of me, but it's substantially higher fines if it's related to a violation of something that affects public health and safety. So we will be implementing that as well. It doesn't mean that you have to charge a $3,000 fine, but it depends on what the council would like to do. But the legislature has recognized that cities, especially general law cities, need some flexibility to impose higher fines on those that violate the law. And our recommendation is to waive full reading of the ordinance, to introduce the ordinance by title only as revised by the city attorney, and of course to request the city clerk to read the title. And what I'd like to do now is just go over quickly the revisions. Is it 6 o'clock?
It's 2 minutes before.
Okay. And so, thank you. I have Sabdi also on 6 o'clock watch as well. Just really quickly, on page 6, section 37006, the text read 30 days and it said 15 days, so we changed that to 30. On the approval or denial of a permit, it read the permit administrator may deny an application. We put shall deny the application. Section 37011, this pertains to changes of ownership of property. When there's a sale, we're requiring not the new owner to tell us about the sale, but the existing owner. On page 11, the submission of the informational form requires certain information. I built in their language that the permit administrator can amend the type of information being requested, either remove information or augment it, as long as they adopt administrative regulation to that effect. Amplified sound, we discussed. Page 13, the hosting platform requirements. In our meetings with the hosting platforms, they requested that we delete the language that said the hosting platform shall be considered an agent of the host. It has some legal ramifications. And we had a great discussion with Expedia in terms of what will happen when this ordinance goes into effect, and they'll start collecting from all of their hosts. I forget, they have a different word they call them, but they'll start collecting the TOT and remitting that to us. And they will also go through a process through their own platform that they will require proof of a permit. If you don't have proof of a permit, Expedia will kick you off their platform. That's VRBO. And so that'll be one of the nice things from this ordinance and working with our partners at Expedia, and then we'll reach out to Airbnb as well. And I think that is it. It is 6 o'clock. So just for the audience sake, we can continue this item and we just need to wrap it up. At 6 o'clock, that's when we notice the redistricting item. So for those in the audience and also those on Zoom who are waiting for the redistricting item, please give us a few more minutes. We'll wrap this up and we'll go straight into that item next.
Terrific. We have several requests to speak, but I'm thinking we need to put those off until after the redistricting, given the time requirement.
Yeah, why don't we can do either or. How many requests to speak do we have?
I have 3 and I think Ms. Sanchez has 1 or 2. So, we can go, that's
Yeah,
it,
why don't
10
we go
minutes.
ahead and well, you know what? I think you're right. I think
It's
this is a
10
good time
minutes.
to
It's
break.
a little too, yeah.
So those that are waiting to speak on the short-term rental, I apologize. And so we will get back to you and we're going to pivot. And I know this is such a strange thing. This is a new law that California adopted in terms of public hearings for redistricting. So it requires us to do a time certain. So I will turn this over I guess to myself, because I'm on that item as
Right.
well.
And so this is item number 9, which is a public hearing.
Yes.
Public hearing to receive input from the community regarding redrawing of election district boundaries.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
There you go.
Roxanne Diaz, City Attorney. Yes, the city council changed to district elections some time ago, where we've now gone through 2 cycles, and every member of the council has been elected to the council via a district election, meaning that the city is divided up into different areas, and one elector is chosen to represent that area. That said, all of the council members through this process really are to serve the entire city. Every 10 years, of course, we conduct the census, and this past 2020 was when the census was conducted, and the new law that was adopted with respect to redistricting requires us to relook at the population and to determine whether there is any changes that need to be made with respect to population shifts and the lines that need to be drawn. There will be a public hearing process of essentially 4 to 5 meetings, I believe 5 in total, where we will have our first public hearing tonight. We have our consultant, Jeff, who comes with us, did our redistricting the last time around, and I'll have him introduce himself, and he will explain the redistricting process. At the next hearing, we will have any discussion about communities of interest and neighborhoods that anybody feels that should be kept together if they're not kept together now. And then we will draw maps. And then the third hearing after the new year, we will look at those redrawn maps and have 2 more meetings with respect to that. So that's a high level view of it. We do have a dedicated website. And if the public looks at the staff report that was in the agenda packet, that dedicated web page, I should say, and the URL for that is listed. That is where we're going to post all our information with respect to that, as well as this hearing, so that people can watch the videos and people can be involved. At some point in time, we will have a mapping tool for the public as well. So it's going to be very interactive, and we welcome community input and comments. And so now I will turn it over to Jeff, and he'll take over from here, and then you'll see me in a few on short-term rentals.
Okay.
And then you'll bring up this report.
You're welcome.
You'll bring up your PowerPoint.
Sounds good. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Jeff Simonetti, and I'm with National Demographics Corporation. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this evening to go through the redistricting process. And sounds like you guys are grizzled veterans of the process. So this will be typical and similar to the process that you have done here in the past. Here we go. Perfect. So when we talk about the redistricting process, again, the census gets updated every 10 years. We had the census update in 2020. And the process here tonight, we'd like to talk about the project timelines, some key deadlines that will be coming up, because there are some very specific timelines that we need to meet to be able to submit the finalized map to the Riverside County Registrar of Voters for processing for the next election. And then we'll talk about as well some of the next steps in hearings that Roxanne was alluding to. So as we know, the council members here in Indio hold 4-year terms, and the elections are staggered. So districts 2, 3, and 4 terms end in November of 2022, and districts 1 and 5 terms end in November of 2024. For the purposes of the redistricting process, all of these elections starting in November of 2022 will be subject to the new maps that will be drawn. There are a couple of key components here of the redistricting process. So right now we are in the 2 initial hearings, which we have scheduled for tonight, as well as December 1st. These are held prior to the release of the draft maps and are specifically focused on education and to solicit input on the communities of interest in the districts. We'll talk a bit more specifically because there's some very specific language that has a legal component associated to what those are. The US Census data released its data in mid-August, and that was also delayed by COVID. In a typical year, so in 2010, that data would have been released back in March, but because of the delays associated with COVID and the process of releasing that wasn't released until mid-August. You'll see here, we talk about the California data release. So there's a difference between the demographic data that the California state uses, it's called the California Statewide Database, and the US Census. The difference is that the census counts prisoners within the physical prisons. But for the purposes of districting and redistricting, the data that is used is what's called the prisoner adjusted data. And the California statewide database takes the census data, matches that with the prison data, and assigns prisoners to their last known address. So they take those, and that's the actual data that we use for the redistricting process. That was released in late September. So that's the reason why this process has been slower than in years past. Like I said, if this were 2010, we would have had this data in March. We'll be having 2 draft map hearings, which we're scheduled currently for January 19th and February 16th. And those will be to discuss and revise draft maps and to discuss the election sequence. That's another thing that's a component here. So you'll be at the end determining 2 things. First, the makeup of your districts and the actual physical boundaries, and then talking about an election sequence. So which seats will be up in 2022 and which seats will be up in 2024. That will happen during the draft map hearing process. The final map adoption hearing, which will be done via ordinance, is scheduled for March 2nd. And those final maps must be posted at least 7 days prior to the ordinance adoption. And the final deadline that we have to work towards is April 17th of next year, so 2022. And the reason for that is that's the deadline that the Riverside County Registrar of Voters has to submit a final map to them, as final and approved map to them. So in terms of the redistricting rules and goals, there are a couple of key components here that we must follow when we're looking at the redistricting process. And we put them into what we call three main buckets here. The first one is on the left-hand side in the red box, the federal laws. And the federal laws specifically pertain to the Federal Voting Rights Act. There are 2 main key components to that. The first one is that districts have to have generally equal population. And there's been some case law that's associated with that, but the rule of thumb is that the districts cannot deviate, and that means from the smallest district to the largest district cannot deviate in population for, more than 10%. And there can be no racial gerrymandering. That's specifically within the Federal Voting Rights Act. The second is the California criteria for cities, and in that light blue box in the middle. This is something that's different since you've done your last redistricting. And this was associated with California AB 849 called the Fair Maps Act, which was passed in 2019. And it creates criteria for cities that they must follow when looking at the redistricting process, and as well for districting if you're just going into that. The important thing to remember here that those 4 in the middle are rank ordered. Okay, so first the districts have to be geographically contiguous. Then, when practicable, they have to have undivided neighborhoods and communities of interest. We'll talk more specifically about what this is in a couple of slides, but in essence, they are socioeconomic geographic areas that should be kept together. The districts have to have easily identifiable boundaries, and they also have to be compact. And when we say compact is they do not bypass one group of people to get to a more distant group of people. You may have seen some of those districts in other states that have been called gerrymandering or have been subject of court cases where it looks like a barbell that has 2 districts, 2 parts of a district that are connected with a very, very slim line. That would be an example of a district that is not compact. And as a universal prohibition, districts shall not favor or discriminate against the political party. Finally, on the right-hand side, we have in the dark blue box, some other traditional redistricting principles. There are a couple of important things here. One of the things that we can look at is potential future population growth. So let's say, for example, there's a certain part of the city that has a master plan community or has a large development that is known is going to happen in the next couple of years that's approved. You could potentially underfill that district so that that population will grow into the area. One of the other things that we talk about too is when we say respecting voters' choices and continuity in office and minimizing the voter shifted to different election years. When we talk about that, we also talked about the sequencing. As we mentioned from the top, there are some districts that vote in 2022, and there are some districts that vote in 2024. Let's say, for example, you are currently in a district that votes in 2022, but the line gets shifted and now you're in a 2024 district. We try to minimize the number of people that get shifted between different election years and election cycles. One of the other things too, and this will be part of the public mapping tool, we wanted to show you what we call CVAP data. And CVAP stands for Citizen Voting Age Population. This is something that we get from the US Census Bureau data. And these are the 2020 maps that are associated with and it's done by census block. And it's a little bit hard to see on the screens here, but if you see in the legend in the corner here for this and the next maps that I'm going to be showing you, the purple and bluish colors are lower concentrations by census block, and the orange and reddish colors are higher concentrations. So this one, for example, shows Latino citizen voting age population. And when we define citizen voting age population, that is anyone within the city any citizen within the city who is over 18 years of age. Okay, they don't have to be registered or not, just any citizen who's over 18 years of age. So here's the Latino citizen voting age population data. Here's the Asian American citizen voting age population, as well as the African American CVAP data. And also, as Roxanne was mentioning, we're working right now on the online mapping tool, and these data layers will be part of the online mapping tool. So say, for example, you want to see a particular demographic set as you're drawing your lines. This can be basically a layer that's under while you're drawing the district, so you can see census block by census block where a particular demographic is. So tonight we want to introduce the concept of neighborhoods and communities of interest. And at the second hearing, which is in December, we'll be asking and seeking for more specific feedback associated with this, and also, again, have a vote associated with that. So the first one is defining neighborhoods. And we ask, what is your neighborhood and what are its geographic boundaries? When we talk about a neighborhood is exactly like what you think it would be. It can have natural boundaries, so mountains, rivers, streams. It can have unnatural boundaries, highways, roads, major roads, canals, those types of things. Or it can be an area around a specific landmark, say a park or a school or a downtown. When we go to communities of interest, that takes that idea of a neighborhood and takes it one step further. And I wanted to show the specific language that's in AB 849, which is in red in there, because it has a very specific definition that we have to look at. A community of interest is a population that shares common social or economic interests that should be included within a single district for its purposes of effective and fair representation. And again, this is something new associated with AB 849 that has passed since the last time you did your redistricting process. So what does that mean in a practical sense? A community of interest takes that idea of a neighborhood and takes it one step further. So it's a geographic area plus a shared issue or characteristic. So it could be a shared social or economic interest. It could be an area that's similarly impacted by either city or county policies. And what we're asking is for you to tell us your community story. So would this community benefit from being included within a single district for its purposes of effective and fair representation? Or would it benefit from having multiple representatives? That's a policy choice for both the general public and the city council to give us feedback on as to how you want to either define that and whether you want to keep those areas together or not. One important thing to remember is that definitions of communities of interest may not include relationships with political parties, incumbents, or political candidates. So this evening is an introduction of the idea of neighborhoods and communities of interest. At the second hearing, which will be on December 1st, we'll be asking for feedback and then council action on areas that meet each ABA 49 definition of neighborhoods and communities of interest that should be included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. One final slide here. We have some of the key dates and next steps. So we have our first public hearing this evening. The second public hearing will be on December 1st. We'll be making a specific discussion and be asking for feedback on the definition of what you want to identify as your neighborhoods and communities of interest. We will be having a third hearing on January 19th, and that will be one of the draft map hearings. At some point around that time, we'll be asking for having maps due from the public, because we'd like to be able to obviously include those in the hearing so that we can go through those and get feedback from both the public and the council on that. There'll be a fourth hearing scheduled for February 2nd, which will be the ordinance introduction. And then we have scheduled a final hearing on March 2nd of 2022. We're giving ourselves a little bit of leeway here. And the reason why, like I said, is that we have a hard deadline. This has to be completed by no later than April 17th of 2022 to be able to submit that map to the county registrar of voters for submittal and submission. And again, the new map that gets adopted will apply to the November 2022 elections and beyond. So with that, appreciate the time this evening, and would be happy to answer any questions that you may have about the presentation or next steps.
Thank you very much. Very comprehensive. Any comments or questions at this point? This is a public hearing, just asking for counsel, and then I'll open up the public hearing.
I have one question. Maybe you can answer, or some of our council members or the mayor. When we did this process before, it says that our final map will be submitted April 2022, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So some of us are up for re-election, and it's not your issue as far as with our campaigns. But I wanted to see how did that process play out as far as campaign wise, when we don't know what our district is going to be until those maps are submitted until April.
I don't know what the campaign process would be, but
I mean, that gives us only a couple of months to.
And so before, though, we had more than a couple of months. I think things happened late, and the whole process got started late and took longer than it was supposed to, and continues along that path. So the last time, which was the very first time we went through the process, we had a lot more time. My gosh, we probably had a year at least for us where our district was identified. Now it's just gonna be different, and we're just gonna have to be flexible, and we're gonna have to do a lot of talking, a lot of walking, and a lot of videotaping. I mean, that's kind of, it's just gonna be very compressed.
Well, thank
for all
you.
of us.
Yeah. Thank you for your work and your presentation. Looking forward to it. And I'm gonna campaign the whole city anyways. So.
There you go.
Jeff, and I think maybe Jeff, I mean, when you start off the map drawing process, I mean, you start off with the current map as the baseline, and then you do the shifts based on if there was population changes. Maybe you can just kind of touch on how that works just a little bit.
Sure.
It's not as if we're creating all new district lines.
Yes, I mean, one of the things that we look at too, like we mentioned, as part of this is preserving the core of existing districts. I mean, that's something that the city had direction on it at the beginning when you did the districting process of this is what your districts want to look like. With that being said, I think the important thing to remember in this process is our goal here is to make sure that you are adhering to the applicable federal and state laws. once you get that to that point, there's a lot of different ways that you can draw maps that are adhere to those laws. So at some point, it's a little bit more art than science, as long as you're adhering to those laws. There's, like I said, there's multiple ways that we can get to maps that would do that.
All right, I'm going to take this opportunity now. This is a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing and see if anyone wishes to speak. City Clerk, do we have someone that wishes to speak?
Yes, Mayor, we have 3 members of the public on Zoom.
Terrific.
We can start with Michael M. Michael, you have 3 minutes.
You know what? I'm sorry. I was raising my hand for the short-term rental comment section.
No problem. We will continue with Suzanne. Oh, let's see. No, they lowered their hands. So let's go with Annalisa Vargas. She is for this item. Annalisa, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Good evening, council members and those present. My name is Annalisa Vargas, and I'm the lead community organizer with Communities for New California, also known as CNC. I'm also a resident of the city of Indio.
Well, I'm gonna show up on this thing.
We know the importance of the redistricting process in shaping the next 10 years and ensuring equal representation in government. I just want to start off by saying that it was a bit difficult to locate the information regarding the redistricting process on the city's webpage. There's no instructions or steps to get there from the landing page. I did see like a redistricting public hearing announcement in the tweet section, but I respectfully request that the city publicize the redistricting process on the landing page in both English and Spanish and include a hyperlink to the redistrict information to make it more accessible. We also know that not everyone has access to the internet nor uses it as its primary way to obtain local news. According to the Fair Maps Act of 2019, the council shall take steps to encourage residents, including those in underrepresented communities and non-English speaking communities, to participate in the redistricting public review process. Things like reaching out to the media, putting it in as part of the news coverage, and or media organizations that serve language minority communities, and working with good government, civil rights, civic engagement, and other community groups like CNC that are already active in the city is also a good way to ensure that we're reaching the largest amount of people possible. This is a once in a decade opportunity, so we want to make sure that as many folks are engaged. I also want to mention that the redistricting public hearings are taking place during regularly scheduled city council meetings, so it limits the ability of many community residents from participating. Our Indio families are most available on weekends and the evenings, and we strongly recommend that prioritizing meetings during these timeframes in locations that are easily accessible to the public, like schools and community centers. That's also part of the criteria in terms of reaching the most individuals. And we also know that the new maps should not resemble the maps from 2011, and that's because we're now guided by the Fair Maps Act. So this is the first time implementing a specific criteria which guides the redrawing of our maps. So we want to just make sure that the city is adhering to that. And unlike this cycle, right, in 2011, you were not explicitly required to keep communities of interest together or to engage in a robust outreach and education campaign to solicit public testimony. And so I just want to make that, as part of, we're here to support and help in any way possible to get as many folks involved. And I thank you so much for letting me speak today.
Excuse me. Thank you very much for your comments. Very, very valid. And I think our city attorney is going to address some of them.
Yes, thank you so much. We appreciate your comments, and we will make sure that the landing page and the website and the web page is much more prevalent on the front page, and so we will take care of that. And the URL was listed in the staff report, and we did provide and published a notice in the newspaper, both in Spanish and English. And we're using our social media as well to get the word out in addition. So certainly we are are glad to provide more robust opportunities for the public and encourage the public to participate. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Definitely. Thank you. Absolutely. I have a request to speak. Jonathan Becerra?
Good evening, members of the council, Madam Mayor. I'm here just as an advocate for our local LGBTQ population. I know this new census, we have 2 new questions specifically addressing same-sex unmarried and married partners. I'm just very curious and an open question to the council, how we plan to integrate that data, that new data into our process here. How are we going to address those? How are we directing our demographer to kind of assess that population? I don't have to go through statistics, but we are a population that is significantly underappreciated in terms of the Eastern Coachella Valley. I myself am the first openly queer elected, but I'm not the only queer person in the city of Indio. So I think there is an incumbents upon us to try to kind of stress how we exist here and how we can be better represented in our leadership and in terms of how we're assessing our district. So I would strongly encourage that you direct your demographers and your consultants to really dig into how we can integrate the LGBTQ population, even if it's assessing these same-sex partners as whole queer households, because they all have to deal with the same interpersonal, intercommunicational challenges that comes with being part of the LGBTQ population. So I really appreciate this process and thank you, City Council, for taking the time to take public comments. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. And absolutely, we'll dig into that, Jonathan. Okay, do we have any other requests to speak?
No other comments on Zoom, Mayor.
Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing and see if council has any more comments or questions. Nothing at this time. This does not require, it looks like, any action. There's no approval required. So it's really a public hearing with providing information, correct?
That is correct.
Which is the first phase of what we're doing. We thank the public comments very much for your input. It will be taken into consideration very seriously. Thank you, council. And with that, I'm going to move back into administrative item B with respect to short-term rentals. And I think we were at the point of about to look at requests to speak. I know I had a hand raised from council member Amit. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to make a couple of comments. First, on the requirement for the short-term rental to have a sign posted. I'd like to add to that the sign posting only need be visible during a rental. For example, the sign does not need to be posted year-round because that may open up the homeowner to vandalism or theft if someone knows that this is a property that may be empty. So I'd like to suggest that we have that caveat that the sign need only be posted when the short-term rental is being occupied. The second comment I have is that I fully understand staff's recommendation for limiting the amount of daytime and nighttime attendees at a short-term rental to 25. I understand that makes sense in a 7,500 square foot lot or an 8,000 square foot lot, or maybe even a 10,000 square foot lot. But in my district, we have 14,000 square foot lots, half-acre square lots, acres lots, 5-acre lots, 10-acre lots. And I don't think it's fair to limit them to 25 people. I know the last gathering I had here at my home on a half-acre was over 40 people. So I would like to suggest or propose that we add an additional layer to the daytime, nighttime attendees for the larger lots. And we can cut it off at a 1/3 acre, which is 14,500 square feet, to be able to have up to 40 people in the property day or night. Beyond that, I tend to agree with staff that we would need a special event permit beyond 40 people on a property.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Yeah, let's go continue with the public comments. I have a JD Seal.
Great country when you get up and talk like this.
That's the idea.
Thanks to council and especially people that are here. I'm a 10-year resident of Indio, my wife and I, and we have a couple of short-term rentals that are near us. One of the issues that we've had, and I saw it even today, was the continued reference to HOAs. If I draw your attention to paragraph 37.005, paragraph D, this is to govern homeowners association or community association subject to CC&Rs. And later it also talks about just individual properties that governed by CC&Rs. Our property on the street that we live in is not part of an HOA, but we do have CC&Rs that everybody on the street gets when they buy their house. Everybody knows about them, but they do it anyway. And one of the big reasons is the permit process, the form says on the permit that you have to check that your property is not in an area that is governed by an HOA that prohibits STRs. And I believe the term of HOA itself needs to be addressed somehow differently to cover property that is subject to CC&Rs as opposed to just part of an HOA. I believe this is a confusing part of the permit process. People believe that the permit does in fact give them a priority over the CC&Rs, even though your purpose statement 37.001.b said this chapter is not intended to provide any owner of residential property the right to or privilege to violate private conditions, covenants, and restrictions. So I believe the term HOA, although believe me, I've done plenty of forms and I know you're limited on how much space you have in the form to put stuff down, but you're giving people the opportunity to be confused and they are being confused. And I just hope we can come up with a term that covers that better than HOA. I know Attorney Diaz mentioned it this evening about being in an HOA. It was part of her slide presentation. This covers a lot more than being in an HOA.
Thank you. I was not aware of that. Thank you very much for your comments, and then we'll take all that into consideration. Thank you very much. Very good. Next request to speak, Blaine Phillips. Did he left? Did he leave? I'm so sorry. And Tim Ellis.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council and City Manager Brian and Chief Mike and City Attorney. Great to be back. I am a homeowner in Indio for the last 18 years. I've been in the tourism hospitality business for 40 years and served on the Greater Palm Springs CVB Board of Directors with several of you over the last 20 years. I am a proponent of STRs. I'm very supportive. Most of them behave well, and I think people have the right to rent out their homes in a responsible way. I am not a proponent of owners that do not manage and do not control out of control noise that ruins the neighborhoods. That's not fair to people that live here that want a quiet, peaceful life that most of us enjoy in Indio. So I think your ordinance does a great job addressing those bad behaving people. And I want to congratulate all of you on the hard work you've done. You've come an awful long way. And, you know, I've made some comments and sent City Manager Montgomery an email on Sunday, and he responded on a Sunday, which was impressive. And that was just some feedback. But the general items that I was really interested in is the fine schedule and the 3 strikes you're out. Because without those things, this noise and disruption will continue. So it's important to hold on to that. I think I really, I mean, talking to the chief I understand we are intending to hire more code enforcement. And I think that is an excellent move because, you know, knowing how policing works, noise complaints tend to go down to the bottom. Code enforcement, they'll be at the top. So I think we can satisfy both the needs of and also the needs of the neighborhoods. I think the check-in process is excellent. That's going to educate the people that are there and making the noise. I think the audio change is well done. I really think we need to highlight the human noise because having experienced it, often it's not the audio noise that's the problem, it's the human noise, the yelling and screaming. And I know that's in the noise ordinance, but I think it should be highlighted. I know you've had meetings with Expedia. There are an awful lot of platforms out there that just steal content from Expedia. So please work with the Greater Palm Springs CVB, Scott White, and I know Brian and Scott have had conversations. That's going to be a really important component. But I want to congratulate all of you, and I am a great proponent, and I hope you vote yes on this ordinance tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point, that's all the requests to speak I have. City Clerk, are there any others?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have a few.
Okay.
We can start with Mitchell. Mitchell, you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon or evening, and thank you for letting us in. I can't believe we're even talking about this. We're talking about some bad apples possibly ruining opportunity for people that have invested in property in our city. We've lived in Indio for over 20 years. We've invested in the city. We've spent money in the city. We pay our taxes in the city. We got our license in the city. And I understand the noise ordinance and that. And I know that we also brought up an opportunity to hire more police officers. July was a good example. July 4th, there was illegal fireworks going off left and right. Wasn't one person, one officer in any complex I saw coming around to shut it down. So now we're talking about revenue in a time when everybody in this world is suffering from COVID and they're trying to find ways to keep their head above water. And we're talking about punishing people that are following the laws and are contributing to Indio and have committed to being in Indio and responsible citizens of the community. So I'm a little concerned with the vast brushstroke that we're covering on fines and what we can do with somebody's personal property and how we can get involved with certain, personal aspects of ownership, homeowners association that's been approved by county legislation, has been approved by city legislation. And now we're going back in and we're going to overwrite that as part of a sweeping change. We've also signed agreements with Golden Voice for major concerts that bring in millions and millions of dollars into our city and help offset rising costs for labor and for rents and so forth. This ordinance is going to kill all of this revenue, or people are going to find ways to try to get around it, and it's just going to snowball. So I'm asking you, please go back, reformulate a different plan that isn't so broad stroked to hit everybody, even all of us that have followed the regulations, has put money into our properties to allow us to benefit from this, took our private funds and invested in this and invested in the city of Indio for the past 21 years to grow the industry and to grow the city, and then just to wipe it away with one brushstroke. That doesn't seem logical to me at all. And I hope that you guys take that into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mitchell, for your comments.
Next is Michael M., followed by Rhea Phillips. Michael, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I am a new homeowner in Indio. I purchased a property in August of this year. and applied for a short-term rental permit so that I could do it as a, as a second home / rental. And I'm actually in the process of putting a pool in and spending lots of money on a property so that I can also rent it and have it as a second home. And I didn't get any notice of this hearing. I don't know if that's like the procedure or not, but I would hope that all people that are permit holders would have gotten notified. I don't know if there's a special requirement for that in light of this, or if that's something that can be done. I know in other cities that happens, but I just wanted to try to see if that's something that actually does happen. And then number two, and I'll let you answer that question, or whoever the appropriate person is to answer that question. And then the number two is, I just got, my sister had actually sent me, I just found out about this meeting about an hour ago. Had sent me just the synopsis of some of the provisions, and the one that the councilwoman talked about earlier about the sign on the house just seems like it's going to really invite criminals to, just know that, hey, that's a short-term rental. So maybe I go, hit that house up on a Monday or Tuesday when the people check out. And that just concerns me as well. I haven't had a chance to read through the whole ordinance, but I would love to and check that out. But so anyways, that's my one comment. My question is there any way to notify all permit holders of this potential ordinance? And has that been done? Because I did not receive anything.
And actually, let us get back to you. I see our city attorney is writing the information down, and I believe we have your contact information, and we can reach out to you to answer that question as clearly as possible.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your thoughts. Appreciate it.
Hopefully
Rhea?
the vote won't take place until that gets done.
Thank you for your comment. Next will be Rhea Phillips.
Good evening. My name is Ray Phillips, and I am the president of a small HOA of 62 homes that does not allow short-term rentals in our HOA. Our budget is very small, and we currently have 5 permits being held with the city of Indio for short-term rentals, irregardless of whether our CC&Rs allow them or not. I'm excited about this. We are currently litigating with a homeowner who bought a home here and doesn't care whether we have CC&Rs that restrict short-term rentals. Since he has rented his homes in February through August, he has rented his home for 20 weekends, and every weekend he has had 15 to 20 people in his 4-bedroom home. We have a next door neighbor who's nearly at a nervous breakdown, literally. We have been dealing with this. We are now over budget by $8,000 we don't have the money to deal with this because of this renter. We've had fires in homes that have been short-term rented. We have renters climbing walls into other people's backyards. We have 18 to 20 people with an exceptional permit from the city of Indio for short-term rentals. We have a home here that bought his home strictly for the business of short-term renting, irregardless of our CC&Rs. We have another homeowner who told the realtor when she told him that he could not use his home as a short-term rental, he didn't care. He was going to do it anyway. 5 homes in our neighborhood are making it so uncomfortable for the rest of us, and we have no budget as a board of directors to fight these people. And so I'm thanking you. I'm urging you to vote yes on this. You are going to save us $60,000, $70,000 in legal fees that we don't have in our budget. And I commend you for all the work that you have done. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments.
The next speaker is Patrick, followed by Jesse Borrego.
Terrific. Go right ahead.
Patrick, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you for your time, City Council. I've been a resident of the Coachella Valley here for 10 years, and my wife and I have owned a property in Indio for going on 3 years now. During the entire time that we've had that property there, we have been diligent homeowners as far as the short-term rental process goes. We are fully dedicated in working with all of our neighbors. All of them have our phone number, have our contact information. We live less than 20 minutes away and have never had an issue. And I would hope that the City Council, when they listen to some of these situations that are being described, especially from the person prior to me, that they definitely take into consideration that some of these things may be overblown, because in the many years that I've operated short-term rentals, I've never seen an issue like that. We have had unruly guests from time to time, and that stuff was squashed in a very quick manner. One of the things that I wanted to bring up and has been mentioned already was the signage. I've spent many years in the security industry. I currently work for the Marine Corps as a security expert. And I'd like to point out that it's marking short-term rentals as such with people there or not people there is extremely dangerous. You can just look at the car rental industry actually did away with a similar thing many years ago, I believe in the early 90s, because people were being, tourists specifically in Florida and other parts of the country, were being targeted specifically because they were tourists and their rental cars were marked as rental cars, and these people were specifically being targeted. So having homes marked as such is dangerous when people are there and when people are not there. The other thing I want to bring up real quick is that the requirement to have contracts signed by guests and then submitted to the city. Again, I've done this for many years, and there's specific verbiage in the Airbnb and VRBO terms of service that make it clear that guests are not required to sign contracts. And I've had issues with this in the past with other cities that required this, and it creates a huge issue because guests don't want to sign these things. And when cities require it, we basically end up just losing money, and it causes severe issues. So I hope that the city, again, takes a little bit more time to look at these ordinances and make common sense rules that are safe and work for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker, Mr. Borrego, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thanks City Council for allowing me to speak tonight. I own a property management company here in the city of Indio. We've been in business for the last 5 years. We do have rentals throughout the Coachella Valley, so we're aware of multiple city ordinances and rules and regulations. Specifically, the majority of our rentals are in the city of Indio. We've worked well with the city of Indio. I think planning and inspectors do a wonderful job as far as the licensing goes. Just a couple things. I think what Ms. Watson, Councilmember Watson, talked about earlier. I think putting signage on homes is a big concern, I think, for homeowners, only because most recently Terra-Lago had experienced a large amount of residential and vehicle burglaries, and they targeted short-term rentals. So I think that obviously putting any type of signage at the front of the house would let any criminal know that the house obviously is not occupied full-time by a current a resident or homeowner, I'm sorry. And obviously it would just give them more of a cause just to go into that house and burglarize it. So I think that if the city would reconsider maybe figuring something else out, I know that the police department is actually able to flag each residence, showing that the house is an actual short-term rental, and hopefully that would be able to suffice rather than putting any type of signage. I think one thing that I didn't see in the ordinance that I was hoping to see is how the police department would respond to requests from management companies or homeowners on dealing with unruly guests. Obviously, I know we can contact Airbnb or VRBO, allowing them or letting them know that our guests, were causing disturbance or making noise and causing complaints from our neighbors. But once we do make that notification, it kind of stops there. We try to ask the guests, obviously, to leave. But then it becomes kind of just a battle with our guests that we've had in the past. It does happen. It doesn't happen as often as I think it's mentioned, but it does happen. But we just want to make sure that as a management company and as homeowners that we're protected as well by the police department. So if they do to respond, they can assist us with obviously removing the guests, or if we need to sign any type of trespassing form to have them removed. And I think that if that verbiage would be included in the ordinance, it would definitely help us out and just be a tool for the homeowners to utilize as well. And a kind of a scare tactic that we can post on each listing stating that obviously we work hand in hand with local police departments that will assist us in enforcing these rules. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Do we have any further public comments?
Yes, next speaker is Suzanne. Suzanne, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, great. Thank you. Yes, my name is Suzanne. I'm a homeowner in the city of Indio, and I recently purchased a home. We've invested a large amount of money in just upgrading it and making it nice for both the neighborhood and for the short-term rental, for our short-term rentals. I'm just to kind of reiterate what some of the other people had said on here. I'm a little concerned that we weren't notified in advance of any of these changes. I myself received this information through a friend, and it was sent out through Verbo. I really hope that at this time, I'm sorry, there's feedback. Sorry. I hope at this time that you will vote no tonight until the renters have a voice and we can put forth some of our concerns on some of these changes, so where we can meet in the middle to ensure that we're providing revenue to the city and making sure we're meeting our neighbors' needs. Some of my concerns tonight were for the signage, notifying our neighbors that there is a short-term rental within the vicinity. It just seems that would be putting a target on our back for them to make complaints. I did not see any information in there that would say if somebody was making complaints that weren't valid, what are the ramifications for that individual? The activities after 9 p.m., I completely agree that no loud music or anything of that nature should be played outside. But to prohibit someone from swimming in the pool at 9 p.m., I just don't think that's acceptable for someone who's paid money to rent a property. And I think that's it at this time. We were kind of thrown off guard with the fact that we weren't notified of any of these changes. And we do have a city permit. We have been renting our property out. We have been following all of the rules. And it just seems that we were caught off guard by all of these proposed changes. So that's all at this time.
And Mayor, we have one more, Hugh Allen. Mr. Allen, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, everyone, for your time. I will not go over the whole sticker situation in the window. I just think it's dangerous if criminals can easily see what's a short-term rental and what's not. I think that's been addressed quite well. When it comes to the rental contracts, I believe technically there's not even a contract until someone has accepted the booking, both the owner of the property and the person that wants to rent it. So in the best case scenario, the homeowner would be able to notify the city after it has been booked. So at least the city will have knowledge of it, but I don't believe there is a way that through the major booking agencies, Airbnb, VRBO, that we would be able to inform the city before the booking is completed, because there may not be a booking at all. With respects to the proposal to have either someone on site or by video to check in the guest, the renter. In some cases, you have people that are coming literally in the middle of the night. They're traveling by car, they're traveling by plane. To have either someone on site or to have a video check-in at their exact arrival time can be a serious burden. So I guess if video check-in was an option, does it have to be at the exact moment they check in, or can you do it 2 or 3 hours ahead of time, the same way that people check in on airplane flights? Those are my major concerns. I always cringe when I think about rules that are created to manage a few bad offenders that end up affecting the entire law-abiding population. I do certainly believe when people break the law, it should be addressed, but not created a burden for those that are following the law. And I'm glad I had the opportunity to speak this evening. I was notified through VRBO, otherwise I would have had no knowledge of what was happening this evening in the city for this topic. Thank you very much for your time, and I ask for your consideration. Thank you.
Okay, next.
And then we have Randy, followed by Catherine Reyes. Mr. Cundiff, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I would ditto some of the other prior owners that rent their property. I've been in the real estate business for over 25 years. I've owned property in Indio for the last 10 years, specifically in Indian Palms Country Club. I know there's over 400 owners in there that participate in Airbnb or VRBO. It's shocking to me that we have only 5 owners that are making public comment. The issues that I have are, I don't understand why the city of Indio has not required VRBO to collect the TOT. I have property in other states, and all of my properties in other states, VRBO automatically collects the TOT tax and sends it into the municipality. So I heard that is going to be one of the things that you're going to do, which is great. It'll take out those that are not paying their tax. For owners like myself that participate, comply by the rules. In 9 years of owning this property, I've never had a complaint. I've had dozens of guests, probably in the neighborhood of 50 to 75 guests over that period, and I've never had an issue. Nobody's complained to the city, nobody's complained to me, and it's about vetting my guests before I rent to them. I heard that the city council is looking to approve 2 per bedroom plus 4. So you're adding on to the number of people that occupy the units, is the way I see it. You're just going to increase the problem. So I would encourage the city to really consider this. I think this is a situation of maybe between 5 and 10% of the owners affecting it for everyone else. Those owners that are in HOAs that do not allow for short-term rentals, I mean, go after those owners, because they're breaking their local CCNRs, which the city should comply with. Their CCNRs should comply with the city regulations. So again, and the other thing is the audible requirement. I don't know how you can implement an audible requirement where if someone hears a noise outside of the property lines, if you're out by my pool, you could be listening to your phone and someone would hear that and they have the ability to complain, and those don't apply to residents. I have residents that live within a few.
Sir, your 3 minutes are up. If you could wrap up your comments, please.
Mr. Cundiff?
I was just the person who spoke.
Okay, thank you.
Your 3 minutes were up, so I need you to be able to wrap it up in a second or so.
No, I wrapped it up. I don't know if you didn't hear me, but that's all I had to say.
Okay, thank you, sir, for your comments.
Thank you for the time.
Okay.
Okay, next and last speaker is Catherine. Ms. Reyes, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I had a few concerns regarding some of the STR updates. I was notified via VRBO, I think 2 days ago, and I forwarded it to a few of my STR neighbors. They weren't aware of this, so I think that, you know, if we can do another call or another session, that'd be great so they can be a little bit more involved. I had some concerns. I didn't have enough time to pick apart the new updates, but my first concern is actually having the window clings, as a few of the STR owners mentioned. I just don't see any legitimate purpose for it. I think that it will attract unwanted criminals. I think this is kind of letting them know that there's a potential unoccupied vacation rental home that they can burglarize. My second concern is also the video conference or meeting the guest upon check-in. I just don't understand why a written and signed acknowledgement does not suffice this request. I think that carries more weight and more leverage with the guest. I think that video conferencing them, we get a lot of foreigners coming in, and a lot of them just don't have video conferencing. I've experienced that myself. And a lot of them also don't feel comfortable meeting me in person because of COVID. They actually like to check in via the keypad that I have for them. So I just don't see the purpose of this. And then lastly, I did quickly read a section. I think it's 37.019. It's the records and inspection section where it says that all the occupant records shall be retained for a minimum of 3 years and shall be available during regular business hours upon request of permit administrator for the purpose of inspection or audit to determine that objective and conditions of this chapter are being fulfilled. There is currently a case, Patel versus Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles. And it was ruled that requiring hotel operators, which technically I believe the definition of a hotel would be a tourist home, a house, motel, studio, hotel, bachelor hotel, which I believe Airbnb would also fall under that category, was facially unconstitutional under the 4th Amendment to the United States Constitution. So that's something that you guys may want to look into in proposing that STR owners store that information. I just don't know if that's constitutional for Airbnb guests, and to also disclose that information as well. And that just kind of concludes kind of some of the things I had to say.
Thank you for your comments.
I have no further comments, Mayor.
Okay. So let me turn it over to my fellow council people. Comments, thoughts? I know the window sticker is something that's a concern.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you to our staff. I think the new ordinance does do a great job of dealing with the issues of noise complaints and the nuisances that come along with the short-term rentals. So I think that part is doing well. I have a few concerns. One of them was that we should do the notification to the short-term rental owners. And I think we should table this until we give that notification, bring it back in 2 weeks with the adjustments that we want to make from the comments that we've heard today, and then redo this hearing. Another issue, the signage, I agree with the signage issues, the concerns for safety with those. Another one, the video check-ins. I think we should discuss that one. I would like our council to discuss that a little bit and see if that's really necessary. That does seem a little overburdening to me. And the privacy concerns, I don't know if Roxanne, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. The other issue, which I've brought up before, is the issue that within this ordinance, we're not really addressing the housing crisis, right? and the issues that we're seeing on home ownership with our residents, that right now we're seeing a lot of people that are getting outbid by corporations or companies, and they're not able to purchase their first home. And so I think during this housing crisis, we do need to prioritize home ownership for our residents and for families until we can get into a much better place as far as our housing issues go. And what I proposed before is we can still keep it's for these short-term rentals, but limiting those permits to 30 days of operation throughout the year. And I think that also gives us the benefit of keeping that neighborhood feel in our neighborhoods so that we don't get as many complaints like we're hearing now about year-round issues with vacation rentals inside of neighborhoods living right next to our families. Thanks.
Okay. Councilmember Miller?
Thank you, Mayor. Lot of things to digest there. I'm big on people's property rights, but I don't think this is anywhere near ready to come forward. Too many concerns. I do agree with the short-term rental holders should have been the first people that we contacted, considering we're going to be taking out their livelihood. We should also be checking in with the HOAs. I've said this before, and I think Roxanne remembers this when I was talking about also building permits before we were able to use the ADUs, that how can we give somebody a building permit when their HOA didn't allow them to have that kind of property or that kind of structure? And we're like, well, that's between them and the HOA. Well, you can't have it both ways. You can't say, okay, short-term rentals, if the HOA says they can't have it, do it, but if building, we're going to do it. There's just too many variances to this. We need to bring this back. We need to look at it. We just had Golden Boys take over Empire Polo Club to expand their concerts and other stuff, and events and special events. It's not always a concert. There's multiple things there. There's lacrosse, there's the dog show. So, all these people are just partiers. There's groups of individuals that come to the city of festivals to enjoy the activities, the polo and everything else. I think we got to look at this a little differently. I do agree that we want quality of life for our residents, but at the same time, we also want to be able to have short-term rentals so people can prosper off them. But also, we're not going to be able to have the concerts of 125,000 people out here or whatever there is of other stuff if we don't have the rooms and availability to be able to utilize it. We do not have the hotel space. We need short-term rentals. And with all the rest of the other cities clamping down on this, you're going to kill the goose with the golden egg that's being laid because you're thinking about it. Come up with solutions to the problems of what it is. Let's work with the HOAs that don't want them and bring them out. The other ones, if they're bringing in, that's somebody that should be able to handle the issues and give the ordinances that we have in place to be able to enforce it, but they need to be enforceable. We don't have our public safety personnel running out there. We need code enforcement people to go out there to do it, to make sure that the ideas and the prosper, and do we have the proper amount of people looking at the issues that we have at hand? Just too many things going on this thing to be able to approve it right now. And I think we need to table it till we can get some more clarity. And also at the same time, people's personal property rights are a big part of it. Quality of life is a big part of it. How do we balance the two of these out, especially for people that have put thousands of dollars into this? I just think we're making a decision based on what everybody else is doing. And I think we need to lead and not follow and come up with what's best for the residents of the city of Indio, not only just our residents, but our property owners as a whole. So I think we table it till we get more input from all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Just off the back, a couple of things I don't agree with is the signage. I think that might open us up to some property crimes. Just in our world, property crimes are up by different laws that have been passed. That's one thing. The video conference thing, I think that could be modified pretty easy. There could be an easier way to check in with the property. But through this process, we've gone through the proper channels and proper public process to get this out. And we've had a study session. We've had other opportunities to make modifications to this, and it seems like we're spinning our wheels. This is a new business that has landed in Indio and is getting pushed more and more into Indio because other cities are either making modifications or banning them outright. But what this ordinance is doing, it's not only protecting our residents, but it's also protecting the business owners as well. And it's not going to be written in stone. I think it's going to evolve. this business is probably going to evolve. I think we're going to be here again talking about making some modifications as we move forward. It was mentioned that we have signed an extension with Golden Voice and the possibility for new festivals and new events to come in, but that shouldn't burden our folks who live here year round. And for the property owners who are running businesses with short-term rentals, you got to think of your short-term rental as a hotel. Some of those rules that apply at hotels are what we're seeing in this. It's like having a hotel in the middle of a community. And of course we want visitors. Of course we want short-term rentals. We want folks to come visit us, but there has to be a happy medium. And by having these ordinances in place, it doesn't mean that you're going to have an officer or a code enforcement officer at your door every time you have a renter. It just gives our officers and code enforcement some teeth when they need to enforce these for the bad players. This ordinance is not saying that all short-term rental property owners are bad players. It's just saying that we need to have something in place for when that does occur, we can send somebody out. Because in the event, if we don't have things in place and something occurs at one of your properties and we send the officer there and there's nothing in place, they can't help you. And I also want to make sure that we're understanding that you got to look at it like a hotel. I lived next to a short-term rental before, and I had a newborn. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and right on the other side of the fence, there was still loud talking, loud partying, and I call over the PD. We'll send somebody when we could get there. In the meantime, I got a newborn. So we have to have some kind of parameters to where we can make this work. Now, if the council decides to table it, that's the decision. But I think we've made enough modifications to move forward. And if you have a large lot or you are in a community that has short-term rentals and you have music going on at 1 o'clock in the morning, that just doesn't mean that we're going to take the liberty to drive over there and put your party out. If you have a large lot and you're having an event and there's no complaint, we're not going to stop you. I mean, not that we want to, but right now that's really not our priority. But we have to take those things into consideration. This is not an ordinance for the folks who are following the rules. If you're following the rules, you have nothing to worry about. But this is an ordinance that gives our officers teeth when they do go out there and respond. So I know this is going to be a votable item, but I'm happy to move forward as is.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. You bring some very important things up. I think that one of the concerns, like everybody else, is
How about me?
I'm sorry?
How about me?
How about Councilmember Amit? Sure, would love to have meetings instead of on
Thank
video.
I'm not opposed to giving notice to everyone who's a current permit holder for them to have the opportunity to read the new ordinance. If we do that, whatever notice we send out would just hopefully direct them to the website to read the ordinance with plenty of time before they decide whether they want to comment or not. But I still hope that the council considers the larger lots to have variance for the larger lots for attendees up to 40 daytime or nighttime. And I think I'm ready to proceed if that is the council's desire, or if we would like to hear more from the public. I think Mayor Pro Tem stated it well, that this is just something to help us maintain communities and neighborhoods to what they were intended without obstructing the property owners' rights to be able to utilize short-term rentals. Many of our Indio residents rely on the income from these short-term rentals to sustain themselves. So I wouldn't want to infringe private property rights. But I just wanted to make sure that I gave my comments before we closed up this conversation.
Thank you very much. And my comments are similar. I don't mind if we need to continue. I don't want to table it. I would want to continue it to a certain date, hence the next council meeting, so that we can get word out to all of the short-term rental people. I agree, Mayor Pro Tem, with your thoughts. We've had a couple of study sessions. We noticed that as part of the public process is to notice this, is to put this on our agenda. Our agendas are public, our agendas are online. However, I recognize the importance of this. This is not designed, we don't want to thwart business. We don't want to kill the goose that laid the golden egg. We want to have the tools in place to manage the 5 or 10% or less of the people that are creating the challenges. This is a community. We need a quality of life. We need our short-term rentals, and we need to manage the number of folks that have issues, and we need the tools to be able to do that. I think the reason I would like to continue this to a future meeting is because I think there's some good conversations specifically that we can modify around the window clings that, it feels like the scarlet letter, right? I think that could cause some challenges. I think Council Member Amit brings up some comments about those, 1, 2, 3 acre pieces of property where 25 people could easily get lost on that. We're not gonna dot every I and cross every T. This is always going to evolve. But I think that it would, from my perspective, serve our purpose to continue it for one meeting, get the word out, let people know so that you're correct. They can be directed to the website. They can read the ordinance and submit their comments. That's my 2 cents. And so I guess based on that, I'd like to see maybe we take a straw poll vote to see who, do I hear a motion or?
Wait. Okay, yeah, first that, but then we also have to make sure whatever we want changed to agree on that, get the 3 votes on whatever we do want changed so that when it comes back, we can get those changes in the new ordinance if we decide to go that route.
We're given the public opportunity to ask us to make changes. So right now we can't ask to make changes if we don't know what the public is or what we're going to consider.
Well, I guess one example is the signage, right? Do we want the new ordinance to come back with the sign or without the sign? Do we make those decisions now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say no. I just think it opens up. It looks tacky, and 2, we already have a website that supposedly has every short-term rental on it where you can get onto our website on the city. So anybody wants to see where a short-term rental is or isn't, all they have to do is get on our website. So I don't know why we need a sign in the window.
I absolutely commend Jason and our city attorney, because you guys listen to us, you listen to a lot of feedback, you worked very hard. So thank you very, very much for the level of effort you put into this. There are just some tweaks I think that we would like to make. I don't agree with a sign either.
Yeah, I don't agree with the signage. The simple for the fact is, if you look at criminal activity as it pertains to property crimes, if criminals know that there's vacant property, that's a green light for them to try to make an opportunity. So I think that should be taken into consideration.
And I think check-in should also be, at the Marriott, if you're there, you can check in with a keyless check-in. As long as you're a known commodity, everything's been turned in, you should be able to check in with some kind of password or code that gives you in without having somebody check in immediately. They're absolutely right. You get in at 2 a.m, you don't need to call somebody.
But I believe we're going to be working on something online where you could check in, correct?
Yeah, I think so. So I think that's it. And I agree. There's a lot of things that need to happen. My biggest concern with it is that I don't think everybody was noticed. I think HOAs need to be noticed, all our property managers, just not of property managers for short-term rentals, but also our HOAs, Shadow Hills, Sonora Wells, all the other ones, so they can weigh into this. Because like this one lady that was talking, she said she had 6 people in her community of 62 homes that they're not going to get a permit next time if that's the way the ordinance is written. Fine if that's the way their CCNRs are, but there's a lot of people that aren't going to see that, and there's going to be a lot of, I think, issues and heartaches coming back to this council that we need to have answered before. So
hence the need to continue this and to make sure that it's the word goes out.
And every permit holder should be it. And if you don't get in on this, forever hold your peace, and we'll change it as we go along.
And Mayor, just a quick comment. We've been texting to find out how many email addresses we might have of the permittees. Apparently, we don't have every email address. So getting to the practicality and the cost of preparing a mailer, paying the postage, and sending it to every single one might be a $5,000 to $10,000 effort. That's what you want, just recognizing there's going to be a cost if it's a hard copy mailed document to every permittee. We do have some emails. We could float social media more aggressively.
Yeah.
We've actually, posted this, as the Mayor Pro Tem indicated, for every session we've had. It may not be possible to reach everybody, but I think rather than trying to make an effort to hit every permittee, unless that's the request, just know with staff time involved and the postage is, I'm guessing, between $5,000 and $7,000.
Yeah. I don't know that we need to mail something, a hard letter, but to use the emails and social media as much as we can based on tonight and how that, it started out with just a couple of people and it just grew during public comment. I think it'll grow. I think people will get the word out. I think we need to do our best, in my opinion, without spending $10,000.
And I agree, but then that brings up a point that every application should have an email address to it that needs to be checked and sent out. So as we're sending out other notices for all the other issues, we can send a notice to them that we're having a problem with this, email blast them out to them, all our other stuff too. But we should have a working email for everyone then. I mean, unless they don't, because that just doesn't make any sense to me not to have an email for everybody. Gives us an opportunity not only to send information to them, but all the cities, all the other stuff, Measuree, rate increases, all the other stuff, we can add them to the list of people we send out stuff to.
It's going to be part of the process. Let's see, have I missed anything else?
The video check-ins.
The video check-in.
Yeah.
I struggle with the video. I mean, I see why we're doing the video, just to make sure that people are checking in that actually signed up, right? Because some of the folks probably have a problem where one person rents it, but 3 other people check in probably, but I don't know that the video deals with that problem either.
And which video do you pick? Zoom? Do you pick Skype?
It creates
FaceTime? That's what I'm saying.
It creates a complexity. I would support not doing the video at this point, but recognizing again that this is a work in progress and an evolution, and for those areas that just become super problems, and we can revisit them. But I'm not comfortable with the video at this point.
I think as we evolve, we'll have more services available online. And that might be an avenue to where folks could check in online, put their necessary information in, and notify us that they're checking in. Just like if you were going out of town to Vegas, you check into your hotel, you check into your airplane flight. If you could check in that way, I'm pretty sure we could find some manageable way to do that here.
Okay, and did we address all the
big lots?
I made that comment, I asked that comment earlier, in terms of, the additional folks that may be allowed for a property that is larger in acreage. Yeah,
I'm
that's
fine
fine.
with the
I
big
don't think I
lots.
have issues with that.
I agree. Yeah.
The last one was my comment on, and I just want to clarify regarding the home ownership. I would like to see us grandfather in any short-term rentals that already exist. So if you already have 365 days a year short-term rental, keep that. Like that with our new regulations, but then any new permits would be limited to 30 days throughout the year, and that would help us. We would still have that rental stock for the festivals, but it would be our families, our residents. They'll be renting those homes and profiting from those homes, and I think that also helps us keep the profits from those rentals within our community. And that's the last one that I think.
And so, Councilmember Ortiz, let me clarify. If we were to do 30-day, only allow 30 days.
For any new rents.
For a new application, how does that help the housing crisis?
Because then it doesn't make it feasible for a company to come in and buy that short-term rental, because they wouldn't make enough money with 30 days. So that would mean you have families and residents that would buy that home and live there throughout the year and only rent it out a few weekends throughout the year to make some supplemental income, which would help our community as well.
Council?
I can't go with that right now.
I see
know where he's going with
where you're going. I see where you're going. I'm curious, and you don't, at this point, at some point in the future, I'm curious to see how many companies, because I know so many families own these homes, and this is a means for them to to make an extra buck. These concerts, in fact, are often a means to make an extra buck.
Well,
but
this,
that is
this
not
would
my-
keep that in place, right?
My decision.
Like I said, any permits that are currently there would be grandfathered in.
I just don't see that the houses that are being put up for short-term rental are the houses that our entry-level families are seeking to purchase. I think they're two different inventories because short-term rental people are looking for amenities. They're looking for pools, jacuzzis, they're looking for access to the festivals. And that's not necessarily the same demographic that's looking to buy a family starter home. So I don't see how the two conflict with each other. I actually don't see the nexus. So I am not in support of limiting short-term rentals at this time. There may be a day when we have 25, 30, 40 hotels, and they may want us to reconsider our position. But at this point, if we don't have the short-term rentals, we're going to lose the TOT to the surrounding cities, including Coachella. And that's not something I'm willing to do right now when we're struggling in our budgets.
You know, if we grandfather them in, we don't lose our revenue that we have now.
But we don't allow it to increase. I'm going to give Mayor Pro Tem an opportunity to speak, please.
I think something, I mean, this looks like it's going to evolve. I don't think we'll come to consensus, but I think if we go past 30 days, there may be a percentage increase. If folks want to rent more than 30 days or 90 days, a percentage increase to allow that property owner to do that. Because the reality of it is, if there's a property in one of these gated communities over by the polo grounds, single family is not going to look to purchase that house. And so I don't think it's going to affect us there. And the only thing that I'm worried about is with the excess of short-term rentals, would that sway our hotel developers from coming to our community? That's what I'm afraid of. So I think that those two conversations we need to be had the next time we meet on this.
I think at this point, I don't have a majority for that.
Yeah.
But hang on to that because this will evolve. And I think it will evolve. And, you know, and do I see SC in December and we'll have some of those kinds of conversations and Carl can help us with those conversations as can city manager in terms of how this evolves. But for the purposes of tonight, I think we've given feedback to our city attorney on things that we can amend. Is everybody in favor of continuing this particular item to the next meeting?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
As long as we get the notice out.
We
to
got it,
people.
as long as we get as much of the notices out as we can.
I know we're not gonna hit everybody, but as many as we can.
Right.
I think
Okay.
we just reinforce our means of communication, and we talked to Brooke about that. And because we don't want to open up this thing to where every other item we have to keep doing this. I mean, we went through the proper channels of notifying folks. Now it's opened up a can of worms, so that's fine. We want everybody to have the opportunity to speak on this, but it's important that we notify the right folks so we can get this going, because we are fast approaching on festival season.
Right.
And we need to give our police department and code enforcement some legs to stand on when they do need to start enforcing some policy.
All right, got it. Next.
Madam Mayor, I just had
Yes.
a quick question
Yes.
on the larger lots.
Yes.
Is it larger lot size or home size? I mean, you could have a half-acre lot with not necessarily a 10,000 square foot house. I just wanted a little bit of maybe if.
I say lot size because
Yeah.
usually when you have a gathering, it's outdoors.
Right, and that the house size is already sort of, you know, we've got the house size 25
Got
people.
it.
So on and so
And I think what was said was a third acre. Is that right?
14,000 square feet.
14,000 square feet?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, this is continued to November 17th. I'd like to go on to public hearing. Let me close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. Item 9B, acceptance of fiscal year 2021 Ed Woodburn Memorial Justice Assistant Grant, otherwise known as JAG, and the amount of $37,512 to purchase public safety equipment, training for staff, and approval of the JAG grant interlocal agreement. Chief Washburn.
Well, good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. This is a routine item that requires a public hearing. would like to accept the fiscal year 2021 JAG grant amount in the amount of $37,512. Authorize the police department to use the funding for purchasing public safety equipment, as well as offsetting some training costs. And finally, approve the interlocal agreement. With that, we also have 3 years to spend it. So we won't have any problem spending $37,000 over the last 3 years. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions of Chief? Nope. Okay, with that, I'll open up the public hearing. Public hearing is open. Do we have any requests to speak, or does anybody wish to speak?
I have no comments, Mayor.
I have no comments. I see no one in the queue. Public hearing is closed. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept fiscal year 2021 Justice Assistance Grant allocation in the amount of $37,512. Authorize the police department to use the funding to purchase public safety equipment, supplies, and to offset training costs for staff to improve the interlocal agreement between participating cities, the County of Riverside, designated fiscal agent.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Furman, a second by Councilmember Ortiz. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit.
Aye.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Furman.
Aye.
And Mayor Holmes.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Item 9C, substantial agreement to the fiscal year 2021-2022 annual action plan, award of construction contract to Amtech Total Security, Inc. in the amount of $80,450.97 for security camera installations at the Senior and Teen Center project number BD 2103, and authorization of a budget adjustment. Mr. Snyder.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of City Council. My name is Kevin Snyder, and I'm the city's Director of Community Development. At this time, I'd like to ask Jesus Gomez, the Housing and Neighborhood Services, Housing and Neighborhood Services Program Manager, to come forward and give you a presentation. Last time I was up and did this for Jesus, I actually pretty much said his whole staff report. So I'm going to, out of fairness to him, I'm going to give him the floor this time so that he can give you a staff report and answer any questions you have. And my snafu in your title, Jesus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. The time that I'm not prepared, I thought Kevin was going to do the staff report.
Sure.
Thank you. But good evening, Jesus Gomez, Housing Programs Manager. The staff report here before you is a substantial amendment to our annual action plan for this year. We are requesting council's approval to reprogram unspent prior year CDBG funds that are currently available to be spent on other activities. We are requesting that the council consider increasing the budgets using $75,000 of these unspent funds to increase the budgets at the Teen Center and Senior Center in the combined amount of $75,000 to be able to complete the upgrade to the security camera system at these two facilities. The facilities were built 2009 approximately, and the security camera systems have been in these facilities since then, and we believe ours need an upgrade at this point. If the council approves the reprogramming of the funds, we would be able to also move forward with the award of a contract as stated in the and requested in the staff report to Amtech in the amount of slightly over $80,000. The amount is $80,450.97, and this is after determining that Amtech is the lowest responsible bidder out of 8 bids received through the formal bid process that Public Works and the City Clerk's Office undertook over the last month and a half. We would also request, as stated in the motion, that the project plans and specifications be approved for this project and that the council authorize appropriate budget adjustments as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions at this point? If there are no comments, I will open the public hearing. Public hearing is open. Are there any requests to speak? City Clerk?
None, Mayor.
I have no requests to speak either. The public hearing is closed. Do I hear a motion?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir.
If I may, before I will make a motion to pass this, but I just want to ask a request of Jesus and Mr. Snyder and our city manager. Before I asked for a study prior to our new city manager arriving, of a ring doorbell system in some of our communities that would be eligible for community development block grant. And the reason why is because of criminal activity. And some of that is in District 2 and some of that I believe in District 5. And there was an incident that occurred that there was a shooting. And the officer was investigating and asked the resident, were you able to get a license plate? Well, when somebody is shooting, I don't think you're looking for license plates. And we've seen in other cities, even Palm Springs, where we lost 2 police officers, where ring doorbell footage was used in these investigations. And I know across the country, ring doorbells are used in partnership with communities, police departments, and cities. And I just want to request that we look into that as something for the next fiscal year in some of our communities as a program or even a pilot program that we could do with some of our residents to act as a deterrent and a part of investigation tools for crime. So with that being said, I'll make a motion to approve substantial amendments to the fiscal year 2021-2022 annual action plan to reprogram $75,000 in unspent prior year community development block grant funds and increase the amount of funding to Indio Teen Center and Senior Center facility improvement projects for $48,000 and $28,000 respectively. Number 2, approve the project plans and specifications for security camera installations at the Senior and Teen Center project number BD2103. And 3, award a construction contract to Amtech Total Security Incorporated in the amount of $80,450.97. And 4, direct the finance director to make the necessary budget adjustments.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem and a second by Councilmember Miller. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Miller,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit,
Aye.
Councilmember Ortiz,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Furman,
Aye.
and Mayor Holmes.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Item number 10, public comment for items not on the agenda. I have Wendell Phillips, please.
Madam Mayor, members of the council and staff, 289 days ago, Leo Parafan, the sergeant in charge of your major crimes unit, reported serious misconduct by his superiors. We asked to have it investigated. We were assured it would be investigated. Last week, there's a concept in police departments called 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. You can't keep secrets in police departments. A week ago, I confirmed that the chief, the assistant chief, Chief Washburn, Assistant Chief Schaefer have been interviewed by the investigator. And at the investigator's invitation, on behalf of my client, which I have every right to do under the law, I called and asked for an update. And asked, now that the final subjects have been interviewed, if there was anything left to do, and would the report be turned into the city council? I was told by the investigator he'd been fired. Now there's a procedure when police officers are accused of misconduct. We had a police officer, Detective Ramirez, who went through that procedure. He was accused of serious misconduct. And after he was indicted, he was fired. He went through a criminal trial. He was acquitted. He then went through an arbitration. The arbitrator came to the same decision that Sergeant Parafan came to in his original report, which was there was no cause to discipline Detective Ramirez. Same arbitrator came to the conclusion, and I know you've read it now because I sent it to you, and you would not read it, would you? Arbitrator came to the conclusion that the chief lied and that Assistant Chief Schaefer may have conveniently forgotten a meeting with the head of internal affairs, which Sergeant Parafan was at the time, and the chief, where Sergeant Parafan was told to change his report. Now, we brought this to your attention on the 18th of August and got told, let us do our job. In effect, let us do our job. Okay, that was reasonable. Meetings. And what happens? The investigator gets fired. Now, I hope you don't lose those interviews because they're going to come out sooner or later. I understand now my client got a reassuring memo from HR today that If he feels he's being retaliated against, and I don't know why Sergeant Parafan would feel he's being retaliated against, since we average one disciplinary investigation a year in this unit, in the police command unit, and now we got 10, and 4 of them are against him. I don't know why he'd think he's being retaliated against, but he got told reassuringly today by the head of HR that, you know, just because you think you're being retaliated against, if we don't see any retaliation, we can fire you for misconduct anyway. You're worried about $10,000 for an email? You're well into 6 figures on independent investigations on things like storing fireworks. And I think now we're investigating who posted pictures as a gag in people's offices in the police department. We've hired an independent investigator. You folks need to get on top of this. It's not going away. People aren't coming to work here. People are leaving. And you better find a leader for this police department while you still have one.
Okay, and it is 7:40. I adjourn the meeting, and the next council meeting, IWA as well, is November 17th, 2021. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.